Welcome to Screen Chat. I'm Neil Bastians, and this is the show where I sit around with friends and talk about film and television and pop culture. With me tonight, Alex Walkington. Al, welcome. It's Saturday night.
It's Saturday night. Glad to be back.
It's another Screen Chat after dark, except it's not after dark here. It's like, what time is it? It's about 6:30 here in Winnipeg, and it's still sunny out. Anyways, due to scheduling things and whatever, this was going to be three of us. Warren Nightingale was going to join us tonight too, but his real world job, until podcasting starts to be a paying gig for him and all of us, or filmmaking, his real world job intruded, and he had to tap out for tonight. And so
those darn education people.
Yeah, I know it's rough for them having Christmas and summer and spring break off and whatnot. So then they got to work some weekends along the way, and it's always they're very put upon. But, so our regularly scheduled, we were going to sort of talk about Ridley Scott, but we'll shelve that for another time because Warren would be a great one on that. He's got some ones I haven't, not as deep on. And plus, just as always, he's got such a vast, deep knowledge base in that he really brings things up. I can,
We always hit the home runs on the big screen ones, and then he gets the in-depth, off-shelf kind of ones.
And he can explain a lot of the things that sometimes I know on an instinctual level, but he can actually articulate this filmmaking and the more in-depth, knowledgeable things, a lot better. But so we're just gonna kind of just throw one out there tonight, and just kind of have some fun here, and just kind of make it up off the top of our heads. We are going to talk about. What are we going to talk about? What was the first one?
We're going to go do Chef, I think.
Chef, that's right. Yeah, there I am. All right, already. And I haven't even been drinking yet on a Saturday night, and already I'm losing. Yeah, Chef, directed and written by Jon Favreau. Came out about 5 years ago. I was late to the party. I found it last year.
Well, if you were late, then
you were even later to the party, because I instantly started pimping it to you, saying, you got to watch this. I just really like this film. It was really great film about it. It resonated a little bit with me just at the time in my life I was in and whatever, and things of just like, reinventing yourself and embracing what you really love and stuff like that and going for it and things like that. And I immediately thought of you going, this embraces this is like your whole philosophy of life almost.
And for those of you don't know me that well, shameless plug, awadeats.com is my foodie blog on the side as well.
Beat me to it because I was going to totally plug it.
Thanks, man. Between the food, my professional life, I'm a retail manager. I've been doing that for 25 years, and I've had to balance the family career. I've chosen career over family a couple times, and that workload stress that he goes through, the separation, 2 kids from a previous marriage. There was so much of this movie that just talked to me, and then tie in, the love of food. And this movie was just a true wow moment for me. And
I can see this being you. Like, I can see that once your real, like your life situation changes to the point where you guys can, take a little bit of a step back in terms of how much income you have to bring in to support all the kids. When that eases off a little bit, I can totally see you being like food truck or some other thing, and this being you totally embracing this thing, a thing like Jon Favreau's character does in here, Carl. And it's freaking amazing.
Yeah, and people are thinking all the kids, like 2 kids. Everybody has 2 kids, but my total is actually 4. You have 4.
You have 2 and 2. You have 2 pairs.
Yeah. So the 2 are a little older now, and definitely, still a retirement dream of mine is that little deli or that little food cart, and watching this movie.
Well, see, you're never going to retire. I think you're the person that you will never be able to sit on a porch sipping your tea and watching the world go by. Like, you have too much energy. You'll always want to be doing something. So yeah, like you say, a retirement job. No, this will just be like your later life career where you just become like have a restaurant or a food truck or do whatever. But yeah, I totally saw that as soon as I saw this film.
Yeah, and getting into it. I mean, I think one of my favorite things is when you take a lot of well-known people, a lot of well-known celebrities, and you put them into not a big budget film by any sense of the means, where you get a little more sense that they're doing this project because, hey, this is just something cool to do.
Yeah, this was definitely a few of them doing it in between other things, sort of as a favor to Favreau, kind of like, hey, we'll come down and be in your thing just because we like working together.
I mean, John Leguizamo, as the co-star in it, or second in that to Jon Favreau. I think his piece is just brilliant in there. I love him in that. Scarlett Johansson, of course, is the lack of a better term, side fry or girl on the side, not quite serious, but great to see her in that. I mean, I think the only cameo in the whole movie that I could have done without was the whole Russell Peters shtick.
Yeah, I would say that bumps up against me a little bit. It went on a little too long.
Yeah, like one or two jokes too many, but just a great movie, and he gets food people in there with him, right? And
it's accurate. It's actually scientifically, gastronomically accurate and whatever. The Roy Choi, I think is his name, Chef Roy Choi. Who Favreau brought on as his technical advisor. I saw him sort of on Favreau's other show that grew out of this, the Chef Show that's currently on streaming. And he said that he only agreed, he didn't need to do it, and he only agreed to do it if they would do it accurately, just because cooking is apparently never done accurately in film.
There's other movies out there. Bradley Cooper's last movie, and I'm drawing a blank on it. Similar story where he's a big league chef and loses his marbles, and then goes a little low key. But you look at some of the cooking scenes, and you're like, not quite. But I love the right down to the end of the movie where they show the clips of Roy teaching him how to make a grilled cheese sandwich. Right, the perfect grilled cheese sandwich.
That was awesome.
Talking in the pan, right? Finding that sweet spot. And so it was accurate from a food standpoint. But yeah, to have such a stellar cast in kind of, Sofia Vergara, awesome as the ex-wife or the separated wife, and even their story of kind of working it all back in, and then his son in the movie, and the way he relates to his son throughout the whole movie. Probably my favorite part, and the part that sings true, and not just as a father but as a professional person, is when a little bit of a spoiler alert, but
spoil, it's a 5-year-old movie.
5-year-old movie.
Still seek it out. If you haven't seen it, still seek it out. You'll love it.
But they're making the sandwiches for the guys, the Cubanos, for the guys who helped get everything into the food truck, and there was one that was burnt or not up to par, and the son's like, well, just serve it. They didn't. They're not paying for it. They're not paying for it anyways. And, Dad rips them out of the truck and basically goes, this is who we are. When we put something out on a plate, it represents us. We don't serve half-ass, right? We do this properly, or we don't do it at all. And it was just a great moment, right? Like you have those moments as dad. You have those moments in your professional career where, there's times where you could just kind of short arm it or call it in, but there's times that you don't, because it's who you are, and you don't want to deliver a substandard. There's so much in this movie. Great cast, great story, lots of fun, good jokes,
great food. It makes me hungry because I've always wanted to try, and I've never yet had the opportunity to try an actual really well made Cubano, because I've never found a place yet that I would trust to be serving at least a somewhat of an accurate or a good version of it, and I don't want the fast food version of it.
No, that's something you got to do properly.
Yeah.
We've got to find...
And I wanted that before I saw this film, but then watching it, I'm like, again, I want a Cubano.
There's a little the Chilean corner in the Forks. We might have to go down there and see if they've got a Cubano sandwich.
Something comparable.
Yeah, but yeah, great food, great story. Taking the food truck across country.
The story in at the basic levels of it, not in so many of the details, but it's somewhat inspired apparently by Roy Choi's real life. Not the family stuff, but he trained, became a chef, and did the sort of like the corporate route of it, I guess you'd call it. And he was in a big restaurant, and then got frustrated and didn't want to do it anymore, and then went back to basics and started a food truck. So in that regards, it's reflective of him. This came out 5 years ago. Now, where did this hit just as food trucks were getting big or a little bit after? I'm trying to remember the timeline of when food trucks really became a thing more than just here's fries and burgers.
I think it's right around that timeline. I'm thinking, what season the Great Food Truck Race is in and stuff like that. And that all launched. Eat Street was another one that was on Food Network that became really big at the time. And the timing's all right.
Yeah, I think the food truck craze was booming already. It wasn't right at the start of it, but it wasn't that far into it.
I think the food industry was looking to try to get away from just restaurant fusion, and then all of a sudden it became food truck, right?
Yep.
Like fusion was a big thing. Everything was fused together. You had Icelandic and Australian, or what, you'd fuse just about any culture together that you could. So, but now it went to food trucks, and now the fusion works better in a food truck, right? Because you'll get Korean spins on hamburgers and hot dogs, and you'll get jerk style fries and a lot of Caribbean fare, but everybody's doing a certain take on what they like. So I just think the food truck thing, I think it hit perfectly, and just it almost seemed like, and I know Twitter's been around for a long time, but it also seemed like, it was just
that was very close to the beginning of Twitter.
Yeah, and really taking to, what's this social media stuff that I got to post on, right? Because it was, of course, in the movie, it was his son taking all the, doing most of the social media stuff for him, because, again, old guys like us don't do social media.
Yeah,
so.
I think that also was an aspect they talk in that show I was watching that Roy Choi talks about, that Twitter sort of started right as he was doing his truck, so it all sort of happened all at the same time. What's your favorite thing in there? Your favorite food? There's so many good things. Like I said, the Cubanos. I really want to try a good Cubano.
I am a sandwich guy. Like, I'm with you, right? You take meat and cheese, put it between bread with special sauce, and then squish it between two hot plates, and like anything panini style, sandwich style. I'm going to go Cubano all the way,
Cubano
right?
Is awesome.
So, but even just like
the grilled cheese.
And what you can do, what you can do with a grilled cheese, though, right? And even Winnipeg, we've got a couple. We've got a grilled cheese specialty truck here, right? So, My Heart Melts, I believe, is the truck called. So, if you're listening, there's a plug for you guys. But yeah, just what you can do with a good grilled cheese. Again, it's sandwiches are a good way to go, right? If you can get creative between two slices of bread, you can usually do pretty good for yourself.
And it's good for walking around food. Because you can just pick it up and grab it.
Yeah, you don't need to sit down and knife and fork it,
at a plate with a knife and fork it. No, you can just serve it right to your face with, they're called sandwich clamps. That's what I call hands, sandwich clamps, because that's shove that food in your face.
And worst case scenario, you got a little plastic container of sauce in your to go container, and you can still dunk sauce and walk and away you go. So, yeah, I do some sort of sandwich variation or some sort of pocket or food variation, right? Where it's, again, dough or bread and stuffing and filling. Best way to go in a food truck.
Have you ever had beignets?
Oh, yeah.
I've never had them.
New Orleans style donuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once again, I don't know a restaurant where you can get a proper one, and I don't want to get like shitty ones.
I'd have to look around. Here I'm not 100% sure, but traveled through the States for a couple football games and got my hands on some well-made beignets. And, of course, the Food Network has 100 recipes that I'm sure I could snag one off of or go online and figure one out. But, again, it's just a melt in your mouth. If you've got a well-made beignet, the best way I could put it is, remember that first time you had mini donuts with the cinnamon sugar?
Oh, as a kid? Yeah.
You'll have that same experience when the first time you try a really good beignet.
I do love mini donuts. But this show, the spinoff he's got now going on the, I know you haven't had a chance to watch it. I blasted through about 5 of the 8 episodes today already, not intending to binge it. I'm just like, oh, this is really good. This is really good. It's called The Chef Show, and it's he's with Roy Choi that trained him,
Yeah.
and it's not like it's not a formula. They just like some of them they're at restaurants, sort of doing almost that Guy Fieri thing where they're sort of like, show us your stuff and cook for us, and then other times it's just him hanging out with people and cooking with them at his house, at their house, whatever.
He's got an Avengers episode I've seen.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. There's sort of like quite often they're half and half. That one, he goes to a place in Atlanta and does the thing where they go in the kitchen and hang out, and the guy and they cook with him, and he shows them how he does his stuff. And then the second half is in that same restaurant. Now, Tom Holland and Robert Downey Jr. and Kevin Feige and the Russo brothers have turned up at the restaurant, so they go out and sit down with them. And now the chefs start cooking, and apparently, and Roy Choi says in there that among like known chefs, guys that are really big in a given city or anything, it's almost like a challenge that when a chef comes into your restaurant, now you're going to blast them with all your best stuff. So they just keep bringing stuff after stuff to see when you'll give up and stop eating. And yeah, it's really it's a really good show. I really like it. Like, and I just like the non-formula way of it, that they're just like, this is it. So they have another one where they're cooking all the dishes from chef.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, including beignets.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, and they show when they screw up too. Like it's very often, like they show
it's
everything.
Like guerrilla footage, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I think we just screwed the recipe up. Okay, well let's just make it up and we'll have to figure this out. And one of them, they like totally screw up. They go, yeah, no, we messed this up.
No,
that's
terrible.
No good. Yeah, it's no good. But they could have cut it easily, not shown
Right.
it, but they don't.
No, and that's great. And I think the movie almost feels like that. I get that it's a movie, but you could do that from a GoPro almost type style where you just feel like you're on the road with these guys, in the original movie too. So that the fact that they've got this spin-off is awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyways, changing gears.
Yeah.
Today, what's the date today? 22nd of June?
22nd of June.
Today, the 22nd of June, the year 2019. Today's 35 years to the day from the release of the original Karate Kid, the real The Karate Kid, not that thing that came later.
Love Jackie Chan, but sometimes you got to leave stuff alone.
Yep. This is a movie came out right in the heart of the 80s. It's a very 80s movie. It's
very
when you
80s,
watch it, and it's like very of its time. I love it. It's an incredibly well made as a sports film. I don't think it gets enough credit. Maybe over time, as a lot of things have happened of the 80s, it's become kind of cool to dismiss it or sort of laugh at the 80s or think they were goofy. I think this happens with every decade.
Absolutely.
Because I can remember a time when it was, you would laugh at, people would laugh at the 70s or mock the 70s, and yet all of a sudden, but disco's back. And
70s is super cool now.
It's super cool, yeah. And so I think the 80s is going to experience that in about 8 or 10 years, or then all of a sudden you have this thing of when you're there, it's really awesome, and then all of a sudden when people turn on it, then it's not cool for the longest time. Then you get enough distance and a thing becomes, you can accept it again. And I
don't know if the big hair and the side ponytails and all that stuff.
Well, not everything comes back necessarily,
no,
but people can embrace the things, particularly like the pop culture of stuff, like the music and the stuff. And I think so. I think this film maybe sometimes gets a little bit dismissed as silly. That if you actually go back and give it a watch, it's not quite as, it's very 80s, as I said, but it's not as silly or dismissible as some people would put. I think.
I remember watching some movies in the 80s and even early 90s that haven't carried over nearly as well as this movie.
Yeah.
It's a great movie. It does everything that you want it to do. It gives you an underdog. It gives you, unbeatable, what seems to be unbeatable odds. It gives you good music, a great cast. There's some slapstick mixed in with the seriousness of it all. Pat Morita is just awesome in the movie.
For my money, Pat Morita is the ultimate version of what I call the mentor character.
Yeah,
things that like Yoda or Obi-Wan Kenobi from Star Wars would have fallen into those categories of an older character that's there to mentor the younger hero character. And I think Mr. Miyagi is the best of all of those that came out of the 80s.
He's probably referenced the most.
A lot, yeah. This movie, and way that you can tell it's great too, is how much it penetrates pop culture. and it continues to resonate forward. How much some of the tropes specifically of it were then later on put in other films, either jokingly or subconsciously. Things like the crane kick and Miyagi, and people like saying stuff like wax on, wax off is still 35 years on is vernacular. That's things people will say, sometimes not even fully understanding, or maybe they haven't or they might know it came from it, but they've never actually seen the movie, but they know what that means.
It's a sincere form of flattery, right?
It's sort of like, training, but like not training, and like, this isn't exactly what it seems, or any way you want it, like, and some people just drop it as whatever, but those things from the film penetrated so deep into pop culture that like 35 years later, they're still part of it.
And you talk about it, and it, I think there's a trend when something becomes popular or something becomes big, society, we need to knock it down sometimes, right? And
tall poppy syndrome.
Yeah. So then it's like, really, it's believable that and a teenage boy, is best friends with a middle-aged gentleman, and that's not weird to anybody, right? But it's like when you watch the movie, those thoughts don't creep into your head.
No.
Those are trolling comments that are made afterwards and stuff like that. Like the relationship seems genuine, right? You understand why Daniel's there training under him, right? Like, again,
and Daniel has an absent father who then Miyagi fills that role in totally. But and the last 20 minutes of it,
oh my God,
are basically perfection. I watched it again today just for fun, and I didn't have time to watch the whole. I got caught up on other stuff. I didn't have time to watch the whole film again today, but I watched the last 20 minutes, and I still get shivers, even though I know it beat for beat off by heart. But it's so well done. Martin Kove, who plays like the opposite, Miyagi's opposite number, the evil sensei Kreese.
Yeah,
so scary and so mean and like over the top, absolutely in here.
I remember being terrified of him,
but
as a
he's
teenager.
so believable, even while he's so hammy. Like, I just love it, and the film really. Obviously, I did not recognize this when I was 10 years old watching it, but it really manages to stand in two worlds that it is. At times, it's very earnest, and then at other times, it's very over the top and kind of like, we're going to do ridiculous things. And I'm pretty sure, I know you haven't had a chance to watch Cobra Kai.
No, I haven't watched it yet. I have him sitting at home, fired up.
The sequel series that was brought back last year on YouTube with Daniel and Johnny grown up, and it's amazing, and it's worthy of its whole own podcast. And someday, when you've had a chance to watch it, and we find somebody else who's watched it, there's going to be an entire episode about Cobra Kai, because when I started watching Cobra Kai last year, I watched, like, the first 2 episodes were free on YouTube, and then I hit the paywall, and I'm like, I'll pay for YouTube Premium to get this, and it wasn't available in Canada. And I, like, just about literally flipped tables in my apartment. I was so mad because it was unbelievable. The first 2 episodes bit me so hard. I'm like, this is amazing. And then about a month later, all of a sudden it became available in Canada, YouTube Premium. I instantaneously got it, watched it in an afternoon. This year, season 2 came out. I turned the subscription back on, watched them in a single day. Like, it's really, really awesome. And it does that same thing, really roundabout here in some ways, the show is very earnest and feels grounded and honest. And then in the next scene, it can be very over the top, and it can feel very much like as if this show was made in the 80s.
Yep.
But then the next thing feel, and it has this awesome, the creators of it really, and I should have prepped and written their names down. When we do the full episode, we'll get more into it. But it has such a loving reverence for the 80s and for the original Karate Kid, and so respectful of it, and yet can still ham it up, and it can poke a little bit of fun at itself without being mean-spirited, which another franchise is actually a reboot of itself that I watched some time ago pokes fun at itself in a mean way at the original, but this does not, and it's so, oh man, it's so awesome. And like I said, it totally lives with the over-the-top silliness of some of the stuff that happened in the original, but yet makes them more realistic, but without dismissing them.
Well, I had heard the theory before Cobra Kai had come out that Johnny was actually a good guy,
and Daniel's the real bully,
the bad guy. So again,
that's a hilarious video. Look it up on YouTube.
Because of the anniversary, right? It's back out. Netflix is showing it. Showcase has got it with commercials if you need it. And then, so now I'm watching it with this in the back of my mind, and there's times where you go, well, what the hell? Johnny was just trying to, John. And then when you watch the end, when Johnny hands Daniel the trophy, it's like, well, was he really so bad? Like,
you know what? Both the Cobras do it. The guy that hurts him, and I've lost the name of the character off the top of my head, but the second last guy Daniel fights that Kreese says put him out of commission.
Was it Dutch? Was Dutch?
Might be Dutch.
Yeah.
And he gives him that elbow in the knee.
And he just drops right away.
He drops, and instantaneously the kid's on him going, Daniel, I'm sorry. And when I was younger, I thought he was being a jerk. But watching as I'm older now and I watch it, I'm like, no, that's intended to be earnest. Like, the kid really did. He was pushed into doing that when you watch it, and he did it, and then he instantaneously regrets it and wants to apologize.
Yep.
And then, like you said, Johnny's the one that gives Daniel the trophy.
Yeah. And tells him, you're all right.
You're
kid.
all right. You're all right, LaRusso.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you watch it kind of with that knowledge in the back of your head that, maybe Johnny wasn't the big jerk. And then there's parts where I was watching the movie going, no, he's just an ass.
Yeah.
Right? He's just an ass, and he deserved to get beat at the end of the movie, and I'm still okay with that, right? But
I want to say, too, before I forget about this, because I was going to say it a few minutes ago, and I kind of got lost, but referencing how great the last 20 minutes is, the very last shot is Mr. Miyagi smiling.
Yep.
And it's sort of counterintuitive that you would think it's the story of Daniel mainly. Like, he's the main character. So you would think normally the last shot should be Daniel holding the trophy in triumph.
And since it's a Rocky direct, in the style of Rocky, it should be Daniel, with the belt or the trophy up above.
And
his head.
Wonder, and and every time I watch it, I always wonder, was this something that John Avildsen found in editing? That they did that all of a sudden realized, you know what, this last shot, just this freeze frame of Pat Morita smiling, and it's so awesome. I posted that picture on a picture of Miyagi's face of Pat Morita smiling like that on Instagram today, and I think on Twitter as well, maybe. Anyways, and kind of wrote about that just briefly, about how much I love the ending, love that as an ending choice for a last image to let you go out, and just hearing the triumphant music in the background, and Daniel saying, we did it, Mr. Miyagi, and him just smiling. I'm getting a chill right now referencing that.
You're right. It is Daniel's movie, right? Mm-hmm. But there's part of you where it's like, that's Mr. Miyagi's movie too. Right?
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, it's they both have a really great arc in it, but just that last image is so awesome. I love that smile. It's so perfect. It'd be like one of my top 80s moments. It'd be hard for me to come to a list less than 100, but I love that whole ending of that movie and that whole last image.
Any 80s kid who says they haven't tried a crane kick is lying.
Yeah, we all did it in the schoolyard. We all did it in the schoolyard.
You stood in the schoolyard, in the backyard, in your bedroom. You tried a crane kick,
and we all thought we could basically defeat anybody. If we could have mastered that crane kick after you saw that movie, you thought this was, all of a sudden they had revealed the deadliest move in all of martial arts.
If a bear was charging you in the woods,
you could crane kick that son of a bitch, and you would walk out of the woods alive, unscathed. Oh man, I often wondered. I wonder why more fights don't end with crane kicks for a while. But yeah, no, it's and the first sequel was good.
Yeah, and
Karate Kid 2.
To your point, the crane kick becomes
it becomes he tries it in the second one, doesn't he? And it fails.
It gets blocked.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that is kind of cool that it. I wonder if they were referencing themselves there. But the second one's pretty good. I haven't watched it nearly as much as I've watched the first one, and I'd really need to give it a rewatch. If this was going to be a Karate Kid episode. The third one, not so good.
I think the third one I can honestly say I've maybe seen twice. It just didn't stick with me.
It was on pay TV once upon a time, so I think I watched it a little bit more than that. Don't think I've even seen the Karate Kid 4, like the one with Hilary Swank.
No.
That doesn't have Ralph Macchio at all. I don't think I've even ever seen that at all.
I haven't done...
I've heard mixed... I've heard it can... Some people think it's okay, some people not so much.
I think that's the next Karate Kid.
Yeah, that's the title. Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it was on TV once, and I think I got maybe 15, 20 minutes into it. And then I was like, I'll just watch Karate Kid 1 or 2 and go fill the void.
I've referenced the rest of the series here to mention it, to bring up, to say that bringing it back to Cobra Kai, and I should have got their names. The two guys that run the showrunners of Cobra Kai have said in interviews that as far as they are concerned, the entire Karate Kid series exists in their world. And they have made callback references to things from Karate Kid 3. And they've also said that in a dream world, if they could ever get Academy Award winning actress Hilary Swank to come out for the show, they would write her in.
Wow.
And spoiler alert, they ended season 2 with a total tease, basically setting up that Elizabeth Shue is coming to season 3.
Oh my goodness.
They didn't show her, but they absolutely end on a note that says, without a doubt, that it says, Allie is coming. So whether or not she turns up or not, or how big a role she turns up or not, they have basically set it up, and I can't see them teasing that without delivering it in some form. So I think she'll be in there for at least a couple episodes. It might not be a full season return, but the show is really well done. Yeah. You gotta watch Cobra Kai. Like, I don't want to spoil the moment for you, but the end of season 1, it's not a surprise. If you're watching it and paying attention to season 1, if you're going, okay, if I was making this,
what would happen.
This is what should happen next. And that thing happens.
But that's what you want.
And sometimes you should give an audience exactly what they want, and sometimes it's good to surprise. But this is a good object lesson in that you don't always have to fool an audience, or that a really satisfying, super entertaining ending doesn't have to be a shock.
We don't have to go M. Night Shyamalan on everything,
exactly,
right?
Because even though I knew 2 or 3, I could sense it was coming for the entire final episode probably, but in those last 2 or 3, in the last 2.5 minutes of it, I knew basically, I'm like, I will bend over and kiss my own ass at the corner of Portage and Main if this is not what happens next.
And that can happen. No one
and
wants
I will
to see
say,
that.
as a sideways, did you catch the reference? What I just said?
No.
My dad used to say that.
Oh yeah,
that used to be one of my dad's comedic jokes to say to people was, I'd bend over and kiss my own ass at the corner of Portage and Main if I'm wrong about this. But so when the thing happens, though, even though I knew exactly that was going to happen, I literally, this is not hyperbolic, I jumped off that couch you're sitting on right now, jumped off the ground in the air, double fist pump, and went, fuck yes! And I was so jacked. Give me season 2 right now!
Injected straight into my veins.
It was so, the ending, and like I said, it's coming, but it was so damn amazing. I loved it so much. I so unironically love this show. It is so well done. You have to watch it.
And so let's go back to it just a little bit. So when Cobra Kai season 1 came out, how fresh was Karate Kid in your brain? Like, when's the last time you watched it, or you just knew it was a movie from the 80s you liked?
I've watched Karate Kid on and off, when it would be on TV. I think I've watched it quite a bit over the years, before the age of streaming and stuff like that. And I can't remember the last time I watched it through. But I think I'd watched it enough over time that it's pretty ingrained in my brain. All the tropes are there, all the bits are there,
It's got staying power.
I might, if I sat here and tried to recite it to you, if we tried to talk through the entire film, I might miss a scene here or there or misorder them. It's not quite Top Gun ingrained into my brain.
Right.
But it was pretty, it's pretty in there. It's a pretty iconic part of the 80s, and for my personal thing, whatever, because I grew up I think I hit it at exactly kind of we were right in that range of the right exact age for it when it came out. I think it was meant for 8 to 13-year-olds.
Thank God more parents didn't see it, because I think we would all been doing chores for the rest of our lives.
As part of karate training.
Thinking we were learning karate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Wash the dishes. Wash the dishes.
Yeah. Son, the car needs waxing. I'm on it, Dad.
I'm on it, Dad. I'm going to be a ninja. So, and the series actually starts off at the climax of Karate Kid. They show that scene, the final fight scene is part of the opening of season 1, episode 1 of Cobra Kai.
Well, and again, if that doesn't give you goosebumps right off the bat, there's something wrong with you.
And larger than just even referencing Cobra Kai, it's just, the Karate Kid film, it's just very much lovingly reverential of the 80s. There's a lot of great music in there, and some of it is drawn from the movie. Like a couple times they've used songs from the movie again, but they've also just used other great 80s songs and stuff like that, and other 80s tropes, just to sort of like, I can't say it enough. Once you've seen it, we could have a full discussion on it. You would totally get what I'm saying, how it's like, it somehow maintains this incredible duality of being of the 80s, but also contemporary, and being cheesy and over the top, but then being incredibly earnest and grounded and heartfelt. And it's almost, just so, it hits them, it hits all those targets and splits that difference and finds that balance so well, I guess sort of just like Daniel finds balance in how the first film, the theme's all about balance. It hits it so well that it just made me so happy watching it.
You know what? We got to do another one of these coffee talks on film, and we got to throw soundtracks in there at some point. Let's
episodes. Yeah, there has to be an episode about soundtracks.
Parking lot that one because I think thanks to Guardians of the Galaxy, shows like Stranger Things, when you're starting to rock a classic soundtrack in the back of a really good made piece as well, it just brings it all together. And you know, if you love the 80s or you enjoyed that genre, right? And then you start adding a good soundtrack and, oh man, I love that song. Oh, it's great to hear that song again. You put all that together. It just makes you dive into it even more, right? Like I've jumped into Stranger Things, like, head first, and love it because of the soundtrack. The original Guardians of the Galaxy, good movie. But my God, I think the first thing I did after I watched the movie was I got the soundtrack. Yeah. Right? Like, so when you add that fun music behind it too.
Yeah, and it's just one of the many components of it. Like once you see it, you'll totally sort of get what I'm getting at about how it just strikes a perfect balance between now and then and all these things. It's just amazing. I could go on about it and on and on and on forever.
Okay, so what else do we got for anniversaries? It seems to be a year for anniversaries.
It's a weekend for movies. It's a weekend for anniversaries because tomorrow is the 30th anniversary of Tim Burton's Batman, the original Michael Keaton Batman, which. Groundbreaking in its time,
and we talked once already.
We had a whole Tim Burton episode earlier in the series, and we talked about Batman on that episode. I should have gone back and re-listened to what we covered. We might be repeating ourselves here, but I think this is really. I was talking to someone else today about it. I think one of the really great things about this is like Batman's a character that's been around over 80 years, and a lot of people in the summer of '89. We should say that summer of '89 was the summer of Batman. Oh, this thing beyond the film, bigger than
you couldn't turn around without stepping on or seeing something.
The Bat logo was literally everywhere. For people who aren't old enough to remember or whatever, I don't even know another pop culture phenomenon that you could compare this to in terms of how singular it was everywhere for that period of time, for those 2 months or those 3 months. Every single store you went into had a Batman thing. Shirts were everywhere, stickers. Every single thing had the logo. Cereal boxes.
You got to bat everything. Bat hyphen and add product there, right?
And they could not have possibly calculated that it would hit this well. You cannot this just somehow hit. And everything Bat, like people got back into the Adam West Batman. It was like whatever back around, and everything Bat was back again. And like the characters existed at this point now for 80 years. Then it obviously would have been for around a little over 50 years. And there's been, in those times, there's been so many different interpretations of the character. Nowadays, a lot of people, or some people sort of, it's like as we said earlier with the Karate Kid, people kind of, it's cool to bag on the 80s. Right. So people make fun of sometimes,
hokey, cheesy.
Yeah. And the films that followed this one, not the direct sequel, but the two later ones in this cycle of four were not good. They're not for me.
No.
They have their fans. I've seen them on the internet, passionate fans, and absolutely, it's totally valid. Because those are, again, I think those are different interpretations of the character, or it evolves.
Yeah.
But people nowadays are like, well, Bale's my Batman.
And I love Bale as Batman.
Bale is very much a Batman for me, and he might be my Batman. Like that might be my favorite. Even comparing them, and I'm not. And you don't have to throw an older one under the bus to love a new one.
But it's not an apples to apples comparison.
It's not. And the comics has had so many different adaptations over the years, and stuff like that. So, but I'm all over the place here right now. I'm totally unfocused. But I think that 1989 Batman is really perfect. This is Tim Burton's Batman. It's there is such a strong Tim Burton flavor, which is exactly what the Warner Brothers went out to get because he was huge at the time.
Yep.
And when you look at his other really great films and stuff, this is totally Tim Burton. It's
He
almost
took Edward Scissorhands and made Batman.
exactly.
Right?
This is it's not just Batman. It should almost be called Tim Burton's Batman, and it's awesome because he's an auteur director. So yeah, he put his voice into it very much, just the same way many different prominent comic book writers have written Batman over the years and written very different versions, and one does not then invalidate another. This movie is really, really, like, I still enjoy it. I will say the only thing that maybe doesn't hold up for it is, when was the last time you saw it on a big screen?
On the big screen?
Yep.
Would
Original run?
Original run, yeah.
I saw it a couple years ago on a double bill at the Classic Film Series with The Dark Knight. And when I saw it big again, all of a sudden it jumped out at me that some of the miniature work is like
not so tight.
Really bad. But it almost fit it because the whole thing is so Tim Burton surreal.
It's got that
sort of
dark clown feel, right?
And I don't think it was done intentionally. I think if they were doing it again, maybe the miniatures might have got a little more attention.
Right.
But it totally didn't throw me out of it so much as just sort of like it really fit in with it.
But there's some great performances. And let's talk about Jack Nicholson landing the Joker.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, how many you got Bale as Batman, which was good. And you've got, right, you go back to Adam West, right? And again, you're not comparing apples to apples, and Michael Keaton. And I
you know what you can say it, and I saw this a really good analogy on a YouTube show the other day talking about this, referencing both Batman and in this case the Joker. They reference both on the show that they are both just like James Bond, where we've had all these different cinematic versions, and that one doesn't invalidate. People are going to have who's your favorite or who's your Bond.
Are you Connery or Moore? Right.
But one doesn't
Craig,
or Craig, or did you like Brosnan or whatever? But one doesn't invalidate another. They're different artists bringing their voice to a thing,
right?
To picking up a brush. They're all using the same brush, but they're painting a different picture, and they're painting a slightly different way. And their technique is different, and what the end result is different, but still the same. And Joker's just like that. Cesar Romero was a very memorable Joker growing up from the Bill Dozier Adam West series.
Not Jack,
but no, Jack Nicholson is completely insane another way,
and so close that you could have called that movie The Joker and would have been fine with it.
Almost is, and you could almost say that maybe Burton is almost more interested in making a Joker movie than a Batman movie.
Yeah.
But to counter that, and I don't know because I've never talked to Tim Burton in person, and I wasn't on the set, but to counter that, if you really look, Heath Ledger's Joker steals The Dark Knight, and you could almost look at that and go, this movie is more about Heath Ledger's Joker than it is about Christian Bale's Batman.
And I think it's just a solid performance being landed by both actors.
I think it's solid performance, and the Joker is so outrageous, and as a character, by his very nature, is so boisterous that he just overwhelms in that media. And when you give an actor, a good actor, be it a Jack Nicholson, a Cesar Romero, a Mark Hamill, you give them that character and take the leash off, it's gonna monopolize the screen. It is going to overwhelm the character, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah. But you talk about that '89 Batman. Keaton, solid performance. Tim Burton, with his gothic background style, you got Jack landing a solid Joker, and then we'll bring it all in, and then Prince on the soundtrack.
I was just going to say that. I just made myself a mental note,
and Prince was in his weird stage. I think we were one step away from the artist formerly known as Prince, and we're just going to draw squiggles on paper and make that us. But I mean, when you go back and listen to the soundtrack, some of those songs, like, whoa, right? Like nothing you'd ever heard before, nothing like really ever came close to it again.
But awesome, and totally fit that thing. Yeah. And like you said earlier, that I'd make a soundtrack episode of Screen Chat, and that this would be a soundtrack I'd absolutely bring up for as a wall to wall one. Like, it's not just one song on it. It's awesome. I love the soundtrack of this film from Prince.
Yeah, and the fact that Prince owns the majority of it, right? They don't jump from performer to performer, right? So,
I really love that they just singularly went with Prince to do the entire soundtrack.
So, again, from a pop culture standpoint, you had MTV and Much Music all over it. You had all the big food chains. You got your, your kids' bat meal, and you got your lunch boxes, you got your flip flops, you got your t-shirts, you've got stickers, you've got action figures. Again, you couldn't turn around. If you took a shot of North America from space, it was probably black and yellow.
Yeah, probably looked like Batman. And yeah, like the logo was literally on everything. And like I said earlier, I'm still trying to call to my mind, I can't think of a singular pop culture thing that has exploded for a summer quite like that ever since.
I've seen promotional pushes. I think they tried. I remember before the Dick Tracy movie came out with Warren Beatty.
It was a week. It was a year later, and they basically tried to make it the Batman of that summer, and they thought this is gonna. But again, they tried to do it and didn't. And I think Batman was so much more than they even tried.
It was whatever they hoped for, they got 100 times more than what they were hoping for. It just
suddenly lit people's brains on fire that summer with the thing. And it's kind of weird, too. You also think, I'm going to back it off a bit, too, that the things that had Statham, Keaton ends up being a thing that nowadays a lot of people talk about. They should revisit that Bat universe and have another movie with an older Michael Keaton playing an older retired Batman or something like that.
Well, after seeing him in the latest Spider-Man movie,
totally,
I want it.
Yeah, but if you go back to a year before this film came out, and obviously well before the internet, people hated the idea that Mr. Mom was going to be Batman, and this was like reviled as a casting thing until people saw it, and then it exploded. This movie played break the internet bingo before there was such a thing. You would
have been casting Will Ferrell as Batman.
Controversial casting.
Yep.
Either racial or gender swapping a character. Billy D. Williams plays a black Harvey Dent, who Harvey Dent's supposed to be white. Right. That would have broke the internet at the time. Altered origin, because they change up both Batman and Joker's origin a little bit to tie them together. It was just crazy. And nowadays people be freaking about it. But
that's not accurate. That's not accurate. Can't do that.
The film, it just so it was everywhere. It was everything. And you just dropped Dick Tracy there. They totally tried to recreate that with Dick Tracy the next year, and it totally fell flat.
Almost to relate it to our first movie, they took a bunch of stuff out of the fridge that was leftovers almost.
Yep.
And they put it in an omelet, and they got a masterpiece out of it. And, you've done that cooking where you're like, well, this is what I've got left. Let's see what we can create, or you put it in a stew or something like that. And this came out of the oven like a masterpiece, right? So I think it was just amazing because, we got Tim Burton. Why do we get Tim Burton? Well, we don't have a big budget, and this guy can do lots with little, right? But what does he want? He wants Michael Keaton as his Batman. Well, we don't know why he wants that, but we'll try something different, and we'll give the soundtrack to Prince, and we'll let him run with that, and we'll see what we get at the end of it, and we'll bring in Jack, because we know we got a big name happening there, and we'll get it going.
And Kim Basinger.
Kim Basinger. Yeah. Again, if I say,
I think that's pretty much at the peak of her stardom. She was at that. I should have looked this up, but I think that's kind of when she was peaking in terms of that was the beginning of the highest point of her career.
Every teenage boy would have crane kicked Batman to get to Kim Basinger that year.
Tying it in.
Yeah. So, right. Because wow. Right.
Yeah.
You had that, she by today's standards, right? Not necessarily the most acceptable. She plays the typical damsel in distress, right?
Yeah.
But, again, you couldn't turn around. And I don't think you could get the second movie out fast enough.
No.
For fans, right? And, a call for a sequel. I hadn't seen it, I think, really until the whole Avengers series started to relaunch, and you were starting to now itch for a sequel. But that was the first one really for me. Was like, oh my God, they got to make another
more
one.
Of this,
yeah,
more of this,
more of this, all of this. And I enjoyed the second one, right? Danny DeVito, Chris Walken, right? Still Tim Burton, still Michael Keaton. So Michelle Pfeiffer now. instead of Kim Basinger, but strengthen her up by making her Catwoman, giving her a bad girl role kind of thing in it. So, but definitely from a pop culture, if you were to tie it into the 80s, it's got to be.
It really puts a stamp on the end of the 80s, too.
It did. It might have finished the pop culture for the 80s.
Yeah.
The world might have said, okay, let's stop for a while. I need to get off.
Again, we should almost do like a whole 80s episode. That'll be a two-parter just talking about all the ups and downs of film and trends and all that. I'll have to do some research for that, actually some work. But because I do not know if there was another big one at the end of the, like this, it might be the last big blowout film of the 80s.
I think that's one of those things where even if there was something in there, it got swept up in the tidal wave.
Another great thing, we touched on it and then blew right past it, just how good an actor Michael Keaton is. And I think sometimes, too, he gets possibly dismissed, and you reference it like we recently saw him in Spider-Man Homecoming being really great. But, and he's doing something totally different with Bruce Wayne that we, really haven't seen other actors do, but something like really that brave, and probably just because Tim Burton is a more avant-garde director, that like his Bruce Wayne is he really at times plays him up as a really messed up guy. Yep. But you'd have to be a really messed up person to dress up as a bat and go fight crime at night as a vigilante. Yep. You wouldn't be a mostly normal person during the day just with a bit of damage. No, you'd be a really fucked up dude.
Like he plays it to get out of it. The scene there, right? Where, Jack comes in, you never rub another man's rhubarb, right? But you want to get nuts?
Let's get nuts.
Right? And You've watched your parents get killed. You dress up in a costume at night to fight crime. Your number one enemy is a guy who walks around in makeup basically all day. Yeah, you're going to be a little crazy, I think, right? You're not going to be... he comes off as a little bit of an ass sometimes, and, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist, stealing from Tony Stark there, but same sort of thing, right? Yeah, you got money, you dress up as a bat, you fight bad guys, your parents are dead. Yeah, I'm going to be whoever the hell I want right now.
Yeah, but that performance of the you want to get nuts. When I was younger, it sort of rubbed me raw. I was like, oh, I don't know if but like older now, like I appreciate it more.
Yeah.
And I've come to like it more. And I'd really love to give this one another rewatch at the theater.
I would like to see a re-release at the theater. Yeah, I think that would be great. There's got to be an anniversary show.
I think there was a few weeks ago, and I missed it. I'm betting it was almost about a month ago, and I don't know why. Like, Cineplex does weird things, and when I'm saying this, Cineplex, if somebody at Cineplex hears this and wants to give me free passes to things, I'll stop saying you make weird choices. But they make weird choices in scheduling, like especially considering like that the anniversary is this weekend. Why would they not have had the re-release tonight?
Toy Story 4.
But there's other things tonight, like they plug other.
Yeah,
I don't know.
If we could talk to,
you're probably right on the Toy Story 4.
Executives' heads, we would be there already.
I guess so. You know what? I should have taken it on myself that to organize a screening, like it's something like the Park Theater we have in town, where I should have rented it out and had a screening there. I'm sure you could have filled the place tonight, and that's my bad for not thinking on these things further ahead of time. But just.
Well, you got 5 years to the next anniversary.
To the next anniversary,
let's mark it on a calendar.
Yeah, maybe when it hits 35 years, we'll do something like that. That'd be cool, but then it won't fall on a weekend. Who cares? We'll do it closer to that. But but it's just such a awesome film, and we're just kind of like pulling the taffy here and keep going over the same points. But it's over time. It sort of did get invalidated by people, but I think it's sort of having a renaissance of where people are kind of like. Those things of the 80s are starting to come back now, and I think the Karate Kid is experiencing that too with the Cobra Kai series, that we've sort of hit through the cycle of we have to shit on the 80s, and now they're coming back. And I hope we're going to see it again next summer with Top Gun, that Top Gun is a movie that there's those of us, like myself, and I have a few other people that know it, that love the shit out of it to the point of where it's almost religion.
Absolutely.
And then there's other people that just knock it and mock it and just write it off as silly and goofy. And it's like, it's not, though. Like,
no, that was one of those movies. Like, I could have watched it back to back to back to back to back, every day, every weekend.
So I'm kind of hoping next year with the sequel coming, which is a whole other episode to talk about whether or not I think that's going to be any good or not, or what it's going to be. I'm hoping that if anything, it'll just spurn that we will get a re-release, or maybe I'll have to organize a screening or whatever. But yeah, like I'm hoping that people, like, as it cycles back around now, Top Gun's maybe the next thing that everybody can come together and realize that we love this thing unironically, and it's okay to love these things.
I think when we were in the 80s, we enjoyed it, as graduating in the 90s, it became cool to slam the 70s, right? We always made, you make fun of the hippies a couple generations earlier, right? And then, so now you get into the 2000s, you start slamming the 80s.
Also, too, like maybe people that weren't there for it, for Top Gun or for Batman or for Karate Kid, they don't get it, why we like it. And maybe when it comes back, maybe then they can kind of be, oh, we're tying it back, and maybe they can experience it. I have friends that weren't born when Top Gun was made, and they don't diss it necessarily, but they're just kind of like, I know what it is, but it's just, I've never connected to it.
Yeah.
And I would kind of love it if somehow they could find a way to connect to it, and you kind of go the same way, like, and I'm an outlier because I'm a person that likes classic films, so I love connecting to films that were made long before I was born.
Right.
But yeah, Top Gun is just one that, man, if people could just connect to it, but maybe you had to be there. I don't know.
Well, it's up to us, right? Like when these movies come on TV and, or we pull out the DVD players, and somewhere deep at the bottom of one of my closets is a VHS player if I need to pull it out and go through some of the old archives.
Warren will buy that off you if you want to sell it, because I think he's trying to get all the good ones he can get his hands on. But
there you go. But you know what? You got to sit down with your kids and go, you got to watch this, and you got to have a dad moment.
I have friends that love Top Gun probably even more than me. It's even more deeply ingrained for them than me. And they have movie nights with their kids, and they took it. I think they have like a projector thing that plugs into their Blu-ray player.
Oh, yeah.
And I think they said that out camping at their cabin last summer, I think it was,
nice.
They strung up a sheet.
Yeah.
On a line
to a backyard
and projected
theater.
or something like that, and had movie night with the kids out at the lake and watched Top Gun, like to indoctrinate them into it.
I think it was a different time though too, as well, right? You remember when these movies came out, and even when movies first came out for you and I, even when we evolved and we got to walk down to Blockbuster, remember what a big deal Blockbuster
it's going to be a Blockbuster night.
Or Rudy's Video was, or Addie's Video, or Rogers. The first time we ever saw Rogers come to town was with videos, and that was a big deal and then it was kind of a big deal if you could get there in time, but there'd be 84 film covers on the shelf, but not one of them would have the VHS copy behind it or the DVD behind it. But even when Rocky first came out, or Star Wars came out, it was like we literally had to wait till the next one came out. Mm-hmm. Or maybe if we were lucky, one of the 13 channels we got on TV, probably CBC, would show it at some point.
Some bizarrely bastardized edit of it.
Some terrible edited, we got to get this into 2 hours
and
with
where do
commercials.
We put the commercials?
Yeah. So, that's all we got. So when we got a chance to really rewatch these movies and love these movies, it was great. Now, I can sit down, and if I want to pull it up at the bus stop, or if I want to, I'm on break, on lunch at work, I'll just bring it up on my phone.
It's different. The world's changed.
It's different, and it'll be interesting to see if there becomes this whole love of things like we used to have for it. I'll be interested to see, my son's, 15 now, going on 16, be interesting to talk to him in a decade or two and say, okay,
what are their things? And do they, I'm sure they'll have them. I'm sure it's,
what's the movie you're going to sit down and you got to make your kids watch, right? Mm-hmm. It'll probably be Fast and Furious, or
it's the first one. I'm there with you. The rest of them hit and miss. We will have a whole Fast and Furious episode maybe one day, but So, anyways, we've sort of rambled and stretched this taffy as far as it's going to go for one night. We've done a not bad job. I know this one was all over the place. If you stuck around and listened to it, thanks for listening. Next time out, I think maybe I'll try to be a little bit more cohesive again. This was just sort of like I said off the top, this one's done it, just thrown together at the last minute because plans had to change, but I just had the itch to do one. It had been too long, and I just wanted to do one, so.
It was great to sit down and talk tonight. We touched on movies that I love, and when you're bringing, I've got memories now, right? And again, you can't see it because we're on radio, but you know, thinking about that final scene of Karate Kid, it's still got the goosebumps.
The visual component of podcasting. Anyways, and so thanks for listening. And I'm going to remember to do this right now. Your website is AWAT Eats, AWAT Eats.com.
And you can catch me that at all the social media at AWAT Eats on Instagram and Twitter as well.
And it's got really, I'll vouch for it, and not just because you're my brother. It's like really great recipes, great restaurant reviews, and everybody should check it out because it's very accessible. It's very like layperson. Like, I can't cook, but I'll read those recipes. I can, and you've got a really great way of making it accessible. It doesn't feel like a high-end chef holding you at arm's length and being hoity-toity about it. Like, you're very like.
I have no culinary training. I'm all self-taught, and this was just my adventure and fun with food.
And your stuff is off the chain.
Thanks, man. Thanks, man.
Especially some of your stuff. I've been feasting on your bacon jam lately, which is the secret recipe because you're going to sell it someday, so we won't say how you made it, but it's freaking amazing on burgers, on eggs, on all. I'm trying to figure out all kinds of different shit I can put it on. Your wings are off the chain. You could run a wing joint. Which was the cheddar jalapeno?
Cheddar jalapeno or the maple sriracha barbecue.
God, yeah. The cheddar jalapeno especially are so ridiculously awesome. And you're also, I'm partnering up with you. We're developing your YouTube channel, your upcoming YouTube channel.
With some Facebook Lives and also, coming up right away.
Also, the other regular guest, Warren, is also sort of working with us, bringing his filmmaking background to helping us get the show off the ground. So you got some different cooking type show ideas and restaurant reviews, and that's going to all develop in the future here. So, anyways, long roundabout way of saying, go check out awateats.com. And check them out on the socials and follows and all that kind of stuff. Great pictures, great recipes, great restaurant reviews if you're in the Winnipeg area. And coming soon, be the first people, be the first ones. You'll say you were the first wave of people watching the YouTube shows.
And we've actually got under Food for Thought category on there. We've actually touched on chef on the blog as well.
Yeah, you did. So, you did a chef blog post not too long ago. So yeah, go check out all those things. And until next time, sweep the leg.